We're talking about an interview that was conducted with Larry Johnson, who's a former CIA officer and worked for state as well. So it's confusing. There's certain things that if they happened, we imagine they would get through to the American people regardless of agendas. He mentions one of these things, and this is the first place I've heard about it. The really big news came this week with the Russian missile strikes on what are de facto NATO bases in wjlive and Zhytomyr. NATO conducted cybersecurity training at the first some number of years ago. My paper cut off there. And the other one, the latter one, pardon me, suffered a similar fate last Sunday. It was the primary training and logistics center for NATO and EUCOM, used to supply fighters and weapons to Ukraine. A large number of the military and civilian personnel at that base became casualties. I have not heard about this. I had not heard about Russians striking de facto NATO bases until I read this. Had you?
No, and we don't know. We haven't fact-checked.
I don't know how we wouldn't have heard.
Right.
That's my point. I don't know how this could have happened.
And
You're looking it up now.
there is a lot of information on the internet that is not correct, so we don't know that this particular report is correct.
Well, it makes me think that...
Or at least this part of it is.
Yeah, and look, doubtless this guy is way more tied in than I am. Way more tied in than I am. But if de facto NATO bases had been hit by Russian strikes, I cannot help but believe every news agency in the West would know about it.
Yes.
Am I right? You have been in journalism longer than I have. It's unbelievable that they would be hit and Western news wouldn't know about it, right?
I think so, yes. And despite everything that we spoke about, the fog of war, the dangers of covering it on the ground, I think that there is no doubt that we would know about it.
Yeah, there's just some things that will come through.
But listen, it's important to get up here and debunk some of these things that might not be true.
So I just looked it up
Yeah.
because we talked about, you would think all of Western media would be covering it. And the only thing that has been covered is, I guess, Russia, and I think we've seen this. Russia struck a base, a Ukrainian air base near the border with Poland, and that was scary for Poland because they're a NATO member.
Right.
Sure.
So,
but
as far as I can see, I haven't seen anything specifically saying that they've hit de facto NATO bases. So I don't know if it's real or not.
Another wrinkle in this is that Johnson is saying at least one of the attacks was using a hypersonic missile. However, that Russia has even used hypersonic missiles is debated right now. That it's not clear that has happened.
Right.
So he's bringing something into evidence here that we don't really know has happened.
Right, and we know that there's a lot of propaganda on both sides.
Yes.
What's being fed to the American people, but also what's being fed to the Russian people. And they are totally in the dark about what's going on.
They've shut down all
social
social media in Russia, so they can't even talk about what's going on, and they can't even try to. The Russian people might be. I imagine a large portion of them are really upset about what's happening, but they can't even broadcast to the world how they feel. They're not allowed to.
Well, we're certainly seeing stories about that creeping out, about protests taking place.
Yes, definitely.
And, I guess they figure if you gather in a large enough group, there are only so many people the FSB can arrest at one time. Only so many zip ties in the country.